Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to the Globetrotter Newscast live today on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Live on socials tonight, the Globetrotter Newscast. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, your presenter. I'm joined by Labour supporter Zach Chambers to round up all the latest news from last week. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Charlie. Hello.
Hi, Zach. Now, can I start with the news that I'm not going to go to COVID in a minute? But I want to start in Israel because there has been some horrible scenes over there of these Palestinian protests, which have actually turned very violent. And there's actually been like some sort of warfare over there. And sadly, Zach, about 29 people have died over in Israel. And it's clear that there needs to be de-escalation of this event over in Israel. What do you make of these protests in the Palestinian regions?
Yeah, Charlie. I mean, you know, these things, Charlie, are awful. And what I'm seeing, mate, it's interesting. Just, I mean, describe what's going on to you, Charlie. I mean, what I'm seeing, I think, from what I've read, from what I understand it, Charlie, is that this all escalated over Palestinian residents getting kicked out of their housing unlawfully. That's what it started over. Would you believe it or not? Now, if that was the UK, Charlie, you get the council involved and all that sort of thing. If that happening in Israel, unfortunately, and near to Palestine, that ends up with somehow starting as a warfare. Would you believe it or not? Now, what I've read, Charlie, and what's happening, what I've seen from the footage of television, Charlie, is that Israel Defense Forces, Hamas, are going up against each other, sending rockets to each other. And I should point out, Hamas is a terrorist group, Charlie. For many years, they are a known terrorist group that knows to destroy people. They're getting a support from Iran. Which Iran's a bit of a rocket-filled place anyway. But yeah, basically Hamas started it all off basically by deciding to bomb, basically send a rocket and bomb an area in Israel, and then it's gone on. It's still going on, Charlie. You know, I think it started Monday, Tuesday, and it's still going on since. So that's what's happening there. And there's many innocent people that have been killed in this, Charlie, because of the Israel Defense Force and Hamas striking rockets in Tel Aviv, in Israel, and near the Palestine occupied areas. What was shocking yesterday, Charlie, and I saw this live when this happened, was the media center being destroyed by the Israeli Defense Forces, because their claim was that there was a Hamas facility in there where Associated Press and Al Jazeera, they're a Middle Eastern broadcasting area. That's apparently, it was allegedly, according to the Israeli Defense Force, has some Hamas people in it. So they bombed that, but all the people had to be evacuated. And in Israel, Charlie, you will see people having to go to bomb shelter, basically rocket shelters, because it's a very known frequent event. Now, it's interesting, Charlie, because Palestine and Israel have been at basically loggerheads for years, but this is the biggest escalation I think I've seen, Charlie, in many years, where they've been going at it against each other. And Israel, Palestine, Hamas, the Israeli Defense Forces have basically killed innocent people on its way. Now, I noticed a lot of countries are siding with Israel in this argument because of, probably because of the Hamas using terror, their known terrorist group, because they're bombing civilians in Israel. But again, Israel Defense Forces bombing, rocketing innocent people in Palestine as well. So, yeah, there've been protests recently, Charlie, in London, I noticed, across the world. Some of it, unfortunately, whilst understandable, people have, I've seen people have a right to, make their voices heard and show their expressions, like with sympathy with the Palestinian people. But some of them been going into anti-Semitic hate crimes, Charlie, and it's disgraceful. There's, it's just, come on, you can't use language like kill the Jews or something like that. And I'm not even going to mention it. It's just not worth saying it, Charlie.
No. I just have to say, Zach, as well, this was all over social media today. In London, it was just, the scenes were horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were some quite shocking comments, really, from these people that that were going around and basically shouting anti-Semitic hate, basically, and vile, biblical, nasty comments to Jewish people. I mean, there's the thing about it, Charlie. This is how I view it. Okay, there are plenty of innocent people out there that are getting killed for no reason whatsoever. They don't deserve to be killed. Absolutely no reason. There's children that children are most especially as well, Charlie, that are seeing their shelters being bombed. Well, by rocket attacks. That's where it's happening there. And they're the innocents. Well, they're the ones that are dying out of this, Charlie. I mean, Israel and Palestinian people have a right to defend themselves if they need to. But at the same time, there are also innocent people that are being unnecessarily used against. I mean, like journalists, for example. As I said, talked about, Charlie, the area where they bombed the Associated a bureau, the Associated Press in Al Jazeera. That was not on, I have to say. And Israel's committing crimes as well, Charlie, before this, like, the kicking out innocent people and housing on the Palestinian territory for no reason. Israel's been trying to do a few years to occupy Palestine and everything like that and cause a few problems there. But it's no excuse for what, getting terrorist companies which belong in Palestine, like Hamas and the what do you call it? Let's say there's Hamas and Islamic Jihadi, who are getting involved in this. But yeah, this is an appalling situation, Charlie.
It is
this is the biggest
totally
war what I've seen with Israel and Palestine for years, as well. And there's a lot of free Palestine. There's a lot of people in it. People think Palestine's the one on their side, and there's a lot of Israelis that probably think, well, it's them the ones that should be protected. But nobody's winning, Charlie. Whether you're Hamas, Israeli Defense Force, the Islamic Jihadi, they're not the losers, Charlie. The losers are the kids, the innocent people that are civilians that are getting killed in this. And this has to stop as soon as possible. This will have to stop. It's still going. They've got to be de-escalation, but they're not backing down those two anytime soon. And this could turn out. It's not officially a war yet. It looks like it. It's got all the makings of a war, but it's surely going to be a massive war if this continued on. This is going to how I'm seeing it. It's not good. I think it's going to end up in war.
Between the two, it will. And Zach, I saw photos the other day of a protest in Israel, and it just looked horrendous. Like the police, there was shootings going on at one area. I think it was like a freedom march, and then there was protesters out, people being shot. It was horrible. I saw the scenes in that area. It was horrendous. And my thoughts are with all those who have died in the protests. Totally. Yeah, what do you make of the scenes the other day with that shooting?
Yeah, that's not good. It's not happening out across. There's not only just rockets as well, Charlie. It's happening. There's ground forces as well. That's that's happening between the two. It's all happening on the ground. It's basically the Israeli Defense Force against innocent Palestinian people. There's a bit of forced aggression there, everything like in that as well. That's what's happening in that sort of area, Charlie, and that's not good because there's innocent people that are getting beaten up again. It's war. It's like a war on the ground, Charlie. Not on the ground, Charlie, in the air as well. That's what it is. And I don't mind the right for people to protest, but don't come out with your anti-Semitic filth and don't start baiting Jewish people and stuff like that, because that's a problem we've seen for too long, Charlie. So that Jewish people get baited for no reason whatsoever. There's different conflict between there's this difference between supporting Palestine opinion and their Palestine people and their right. Absolutely, you should. If they got their rights, Israeli people have got their rights as well. Jews and Arabs, they've all got their rights as well. They should, they should be able to live their right in peace and fairness, and all separated from others, so they don't conflict with each other. This is not happening. It's not happening at the moment, and it's gone out of control, Charlie.
Yeah, please comment down below what you think about these protests, because I tell you what, I think they're horrendous. Please comment down below on the Globetrotter Newscast. I am live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Charlie Tolhurst. Please, guys, get involved. Just comment down below and say what you think about these protests. I think they're personally awful, and something has got to be done. And I'm sure Hamas, who's this terrorist group in Israel, are the ones to blame for conflicting these protests. But we're going to move on now from that to COVID-19. Now, Zach, the India variant is definitely spreading across parts of the countries, in Essex now as well, in Chelmsford. I'm confident, though, that vaccines will work against it. And there's been lots of surge vaccinations going across parts of the UK about in Bolton with the spread of this. What do you make of the latest developments on this?
Yeah, so here's how I view it, Charlie, in terms of where we are with the Indian variant, because it has tripled in Bolton. That's worrying. That is no doubt a very big concern. Now, we had a press conference on Friday, Charlie, outline position. This Indian variant appears to be more transmissible. It appears to be up to 50, potentially, according to the SPI-M papers that was released by the government overnight, up to 50% more transmissible than the Kent variant. That word is important. 50% more transmissible than the Kent variant. Now, if we thought the Kent variant was 60 to 70% more transmissible than the original strain of COVID, then add that on to the 50% more transmissible strain of the Indian variant compared to the Kent, then it's very transmissible, Charlie. It's like a super spreader, that is. And you know what happened in India, Charlie, where they had COVID? It took off like a rocket. So, yes, it's concerning to see this cases tripling, though, Charlie, in Bolton. That's really concerning. I don't view it, though, Charlie, as in the same situation as the Kent variant, when we had the Kent one spreading across the country. And I'll tell you why for certain. I view it, when we had the Kent variant at the time in December, Charlie, and that was starting to spread, we were screwed, basically. And because we didn't have a vaccine then. We didn't have mass vaccinations at the time. And considering the spread of it, we were in trouble. Basically, it would become dominant. It would start spreading across many places across the area, and we would have been in trouble. In 1 month later, we were in trouble. We were in lockdown. Yeah, exactly. We were in a third lockdown. I don't feel that way with the Indian variant now. I don't feel that, and I will explain why. Now, at the current situation, many millions have been vaccinated across the UK, Charlie. Many millions have been vaccinated across the UK at the moment. We've vaccinated so many people now that it shouldn't spread as much. And another thing is, Charlie, as well, is that it doesn't appear that the Indian variant is going to evade the vaccines. That's very important to point out. So I think we're in a better position with the Indian variant now, despite the concerns about it, compared to where we were in December with the Kent. Because if the Indian variant started spreading in December, Charlie, we would have been screwed like the Kent variant. We would have been stuffed. Now, I don't think that way. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I am concerned, though, that there is a portion of people that do need to be vaccinated, and that they need to be vaccinated as soon as possible so that this doesn't spread any further. So, yeah. So I noticed the JCVI have now come up with recommendations saying that those over 50 could get their second vaccine. Now only have to wait 8 weeks rather than 12. This doesn't apply to anyone under 50, it's over 50. So the same rules for under 50s. It is. And Andy Burnham, I believe. Andy Burnham suggested actually this week that all over 18s in Bolton should get the vaccine, and I actually think it's a good idea. So what I think needs to be done, Charlie, with the India in terms of how to deal with Indian variants is obviously do surge testing and vaccination in areas that has got the Indian variant, and do that, and you could reduce the spread of the virus. Now you need people to be fully vaccinated, obviously, so getting at least one dose to protect them. It doesn't fully protect them, but at least gives them some protection. But vaccination needs to be speeded up, and people do need to actually get the vaccine. That's the one important thing, Charlie, I think that needs to happen, that people do need to get the vaccine to stop this Indian variant spreading, because this is a very fast spreading vaccine. Fast spreading variant at the moment. And we saw what it like taking off in India. Look how that took off. So yeah, people need to be vaccinated, need to do it as fast as they can. And the government have not ruled out actually delaying stage 4 of the plan, depending on what the outcome of the Indian variant is. If it's 50% more transmissible, they said they could be in trouble, really, in terms of them have to delay it. The roadmap at stage 4, which is the final lifting of restrictions. I'm not sure that will go down particularly well. But people do need to be vaccinated, Charlie. People do need to get vaccinated. I had my second jab on Friday, Charlie, which you'll be delighted to hear. So yes,
I'm preparing for the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, because I don't know what the side effects were. My first one was horrible.
Charlie, I took my second dose Friday. I'm fine. I mean, the only thing I think I've had is a stiff arm on the second. The second dose appears to be much better than the first dose. I mean, like with me, right, Charlie, I got the chills my first dose. And it was not horrible. What was horrible getting the chills was the time of night I got it. I got it at midnight when I was about to go to bed. So it felt really horrible. And I got a stiff arm, a raised temperature. That's how I felt. When I've had my second dose, the only side effect I've ever had was a bit of a stiff arm, which actually seems to be getting better, Charlie. So I feel it's not as bad getting the second dose, the side effects, as the first dose. That's the good news, Charlie. So I feel fine. I don't think it'll be bad for you, Charlie. I don't think it will be that bad.
No,
you'll get
20 million now that have had it, so I'm sure.
Yeah, that's 20. Yeah, so you probably won't get any major side effects this time, Charlie, and maybe a raised temperature or anything like that. That's perfectly normal. Stiff arm, that's perfectly normal, but I don't think it should be as bad.
Jack, comment from one of my friends, Jack, Formula One's tweeted, I thought the government should have delayed the lifting of this for 17th May by a week to gather more data about how this is spreading. I think in response to that question, it's a difficult one to say. I personally think we should go ahead tomorrow with easing the lockdown, because if you think about it, okay, I know there'll be some people out there that are going to say delay this thing, but if you think about it, there are businesses out there who really are struggling. And let's be honest with you, Jonathan Van Tam did say that if you have 2 fully vaccinated people, it is actually safe to meet indoors. So it's an interesting one. I think there is a lot of sort of fear going around, like especially the scientists. Like we had a paper up the other day saying that actually there was like totalitarian messages coming. I mean, I think people have got to be careful. Like, just be careful. Obviously, wear the mask in certain situations. Take care of yourself. I mean, Zach, what do you make of this?
To be fair, right, okay.
Do you think people should be careful?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at that stage now where, Charlie, where stage 3 can go ahead. They've obviously, I don't think they would have done this for the sake of it. They've obviously reviewed the data, and they think it's okay. I do think, though, originally, Charlie, if we go back to the original roadmap, we're at the final lifting lockdown at 21st of June, something like that. And if you're looking for the roadmap for, vaccinating younger people, it's a bit inconsistent. So you see, I think stage 4, Charlie, should be at the end of July, at the earliest August. And I'll tell you why for certain. If we, all over 18 should be offered a jab by the end of July. Yet we're basically lifting all legal restrictions, allowing people to gather massively in clubs, in that sort of thing, nightclubs, on the 21st of June. Now, if you open up like nightclubs where very much the very young people go, very much the over 18s will go, like the youngest people, before they are vaccinated, then I think that's a little bit of a problem, to be fair, because you are basically allowing people to gather, young people to gather, before they've even been vaccinated. So I think, they should be at the end. They should really do stage 4 at the early August, end of July. That's how I view it. And I think they should be using that time instead, if they are going to delay stage 4, to do more pilot events like the mass gatherings club. Open one club up as well. Open one up if needed to be, and that sort of thing as well. That sort of thing. So I agree on that, Gavin. In terms of Jack's question, I think, I thought the government should delay lifting restrictions. Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand because there's a little bit concern that, this is going to start increasing now. But you obviously got to get the data in advance. And I think at the most, if there's going to be any delay because of this Indian event, Charlie, I think it's going to happen to stage 4. I think that the most they're going to do, if they're going to take some action, I think they'll delay stage 4 at the least. And they'll probably delay it by about 3 or 4 a month to get at least the data in to see whether it's improving. They won't delay it for just 1 week. Mm. I think they'll have to delay it. If they are going to have to delay it, they will have to delay it by at least a month. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I think as well, in response to Jack's question, I mentioned about the Formula 1 British Grand Prix as well. That could still go, that if we're in step 3, that can still go ahead with fans this year.
That still can go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. You would get some fans, and you may not be able to reach the full capacity.
No, definitely.
You would be able to, you'd at least get, I think, 25, 50% maximum at the most to see the race. I think, that would be perfectly legitimate as a pilot event if you need to do, or it won't be a pilot event because you'll be allowed to maximum capacity. I think it's about 25% outdoor, something like that.
Yeah.
I know from tomorrow there's going to be, we've got lifting restrictions where there will be fans return to football. We saw it return to Saturday of the FA Cup final, Leicester City one. Yes. So we get that out there with fans in the stadium. But we saw that went well. That pilot went really well. The fans is better in the football. And we'll be seeing that back in Monday and Tuesday as well. Because that'll be the last 2 rounds of the Premier League will take place with fans, which would be great to see, Charlie. I'm really looking forward to see the fans again. We just saw the beauty of fans on the FA Cup final.
Wembley. It looked quite cool, actually, didn't it? I must admit, it did look quite cool.
It looked brilliant, Charlie. And as you probably can tell, I am a Leicester City supporter. And I was honestly absolutely thrilled with the results over the weekend. I was shocked. Nevertheless, but I'm so happy. I'm glad I wasn't coming onto the phone screaming at you or anything, Charlie.
Yeah, no. It was like they had the European Super League chaos, and we've had the result for the FA Cup.
Fair,
so
I phoned up one of my mates after the match Sunday, and I literally just screaming and celebrating on the phone. And I think it lasted 2 minutes. But it was worth it anyway. I did just phone him later and I apologise to him and saying I thought I screamed his ears out and he was worth it, mate. But yeah, it was
good to see the pilot events coming back. As well as that, Zach, I think this India variant isn't as bad as people will make it out to be. I think it'll be fine. I think the vaccines, I did have some data out from Oxford University. I think the AstraZeneca vaccine looks like it's still going to be effective against the strain.
Yeah.
and as well as that, Pfizer and Moderna as well.
That's the main thing, Charlie. If the vaccines work against the Indian variant, that changes the course, because if that works, that means then this virus is not going to take off and it's not going to doom it like it is. What we need to though focus on is vaccinating much people as fast as we can, Charlie. You know, that's the main thing.
I think the thing is though, I think the national lockdowns are ruled out now. I totally think that.
Yeah,
I think local lockdowns. I mean, even local lockdowns. Andy Burnham said the other day, it's going to be like, it's just like a lead, basically.
Yeah.
Like, imagine Bolton being locked down again. Businesses could go bust. It would be horrible.
I think that I think at the very least now, knowing Boris Johnson today, Charlie, is that he, at the most, considering he's took a completely different attitude since February time, I think at the most he'll probably do is delay stage 4. That's the most I think he'll do. I don't think he'll put any additional restrictions on anything like that. I think the most he will do, if needed to be, is delay stage 4. That's not necessarily going to happen, but I think if he needs to do something, he feels like he's compelled to do something, that will be what happens, I think.
Yeah, I think as well, Zach, and some areas might move to stage 4 and some might not be. But it's going to be interesting to see how that gets on. Obviously, we'll let you know, guys, down in the comments about this Indy event. I'm personally think vaccines will still be effective against it. I know there's some concern going on, but I'm very confident that the India variant will be managed in the UK, and we will be able to get vaccinating people and get this country back moving again very soon. So let me know down in the comments below about the Indy variant. But we're going to move on now to as well as Jack's just commented quickly, we have also got a lot of people, a lot of big events coming up, like European Finals, British Grand Prix. How much would the economy shrink or lose money if they were not at least 50% capacity, do you think? Another question there.
Well, if we talk about, Charlie, if you talk about the economy and stuff like that, I think if he had 0, that wouldn't be good. I think it's better if you had something, if you're going to improve the economy, if you're looking from an economic perspective, having 50% is better than none. You're still going to bring in plenty of revenue, Charlie, if you bring in like 50% economy, I think. That's how I see it. If it was none, then you obviously have to find different ways to pay for something to make it up. But, I mean, if we talk about F1 and stuff like that, they've managed to go ahead with big events without any, like, crowds, anything like Indy 500 went ahead without crowds last year. There were several events that went ahead without crowds last year, and they still managed to get the money in because either the organisers get burst them or something like money. But let's get. I think considering 50%, that's fair. Let's get the money in. People buy tickets, then they'll get the revenue going, and that'll just help with the revenue. So 50% is better than none. Let's just say that. Yeah,
I mean, in response to Jack's question, I think it will be 50% capacity. I think they could still make about potentially 25%, maybe 30% of the actual average sum they usually make. So I'm not sure that one, but I would say probably in terms of profit, I would see probably a net profit of around sort of maybe 25% extra. I don't think with it maybe even 50% capacity could be sort of half of their normal revenue. I think that would be the whole point as well. So we'll let you know down in the comments about this. If you want to move on now to motorsport, and Zach, IndyCar was back with a bang at Indianapolis for the GMR Grand Prix on the road course, and Romain Grosjean surprised us all on Friday, taking his maiden pole position in IndyCar. What did you make of this?
I watched it. That was quite something. Romain Grosjean getting his first pole in IndyCar. I mean, what a story. Think about it, Charlie. Just a month, like December time, just like that time, November. I think it was summer, November, December time. He was basically in a car. He was basically in a burning car. And that was it for his F1 career after that. You know, he came out alive, thankfully, but that was it. To think about it, you know, yesterday bringing his first, the Friday, to see him on pole for the first time, that was something. He was 1/10 faster than Newgarden. It was quite something for him to get to the fast six anyway, but to get pole was incredible. Something like that. Now, rather sadly, he didn't win, but he did. Unfortunately, it was a debut win for Rinus VeeKay. Rinus VeeKay outdid Grosjean in the stops on that area. In terms of strategy, Romain Grosjean was on more the colder, harder tyre compared to Rinus VeeKay, one of the red, softer tyres that brought out the performance. But you know, and that strategy worked for him. But Grosjean was an excellent weekend. Second place, his first podium still. He's done a fantastic job that weekend, Grosjean. Rinus VeeKay, though, what a brilliant first win for him as well. He did a good job. So let me see the results.
Yeah, I'm just getting the standings up now, Zach, for the event. Grosjean, Rinus VeeKay winner, Romain Grosjean second, Alex Palau third from him. Good result for Alex Palau, actually. Joseph Newgarden fourth, Graham Rahal fifth, Simon Pagenaud sixth, Alexander Rossi seventh. Another debutant or another rookie to this year's championship, Scott McLaughlin eighth, Scott Dixon ninth, and Marcus Ericsson in 10th position. Loads of drivers on that list there. Will Power just missing in that event there. So it's been a lot of standings, a lot of the results. I'd say the race was pretty interesting with strategy. It wasn't like the bangers we got at Texas with the huge crashes and stuff like that, but it really treated us to an interesting race, Zach. And we go to Indy, the Indy 500 at the end of this month, and next weekend is qualifying. What do you make of this?
Well, I'm looking forward to it, Charlie. I mean, it's Tuesday, it's the first practice session, actually. It's going to be lots of practice sessions, lots of qualifying sessions. So I'm really looking forward to catching up on it. But yes, Indy 500 is going to be the best race in the world, no doubt about it. One of the spectacles of the season, Charlie. It's going to make for such interesting racing, I think, as well. Anything could happen. It's the Brickyard. What else? What more could you get? The fast is like one of the best races on the planet, the most exciting, the most grueling as well. It's going to be one to watch, and I'm really, really excited to see what happens. It's not on the same weekend as the Monaco Grand Prix this year, which is a bit of a shame because that normally happens. We normally get once you watch the Monaco Grand Prix, you normally watch Indy 500 afterwards. Not happening this year, but nevertheless, I'm still very excited to watch it. Practice starts on Tuesday. This is one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest races of the year, and you get practice on Tuesday throughout the weekend. It's like non-stop, Charlie. So yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a long couple of weeks ahead, but it's certainly worth watching.
It is, Zach. I'm obviously last year's race was won by Takuma Sato under caution after Rinus VeeKay suffered a horrifying accident just before the end. Zach, who are the ones to watch for this year's Indy 500, do you think?
Do you know what? It's interesting, Charlie, because I think, you know, the rookies have done well so far this season. They've took about, you know, they've took the most. We've had a couple of first time winners this year. So obviously Takuma Sato will come in as well, hoping to win. But qualifying is going to be crucial, Charlie. I think definitely. So I think qualifying is going to be crucial to see who, you know, gets in there as well. Let me see who's. So we got obviously Will. There's going to be a few 3-time winners in there. Helio Castroneves, who won 3 times. Takuma Sato's defending winner, so he'll be confident in this one. There's a big field actually, Charlie. I think there's a few unknown names. You got Helio Castroneves, Andretti Montoya, Max Chilton as well, who's I think that's as well. Scott McLaughlin is the first time. You know, this is the first time for you to put in the 500.
Santino Ferrucci as well. Some drivers are only doing Indy 500, just to let you know, as well.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people that are only doing the Indy 500. Simone Di Silvestro as well. She's one to watch, I think.
Yeah, so that definitely adds well. Will be definitely one to watch. But there's a lot of drivers, Charlie, that will happen. There is going to be a lot of things that happen. So, it all depends really what happens on qualifying on Saturday and the Sunday, into what they call the trials. But yeah, it's very exciting, Charlie. Really
very exciting indeed. I can't wait for this big event of the year. And you can watch that on Sky Sports as well, for the Indianapolis 500. That will be on the 30th of May. So I'll just say that now. That's May Bank Holiday weekend for the Indy 500 as well. We're going to move on now to NASCAR. They go to Dover, I believe, this weekend for the I forgot what the race was called, the Dryden 400. And this is an interesting one, Zach. And at the moment, I've just got the race timings up now. Kyle Larson leading from Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin.
Yes. So those two have been upfield a little bit this season, as well. Larson won stage 1, I believe. Chase Elliott has started for the rear. That's interesting. But just to go over, I believe it'll be Larson, Hamlin, and Corson have just come out. I believe the caution has just come out as well. Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, William Byron, Blaney, Logano, Alex Bowman, Chris Buescher, Kurt Busch, top 10. We're on 52 out of 120 on stage 2, lap 172 overall. There's been 5 lead changes so far, and there's been about 1 hour and 23 of racing. The pit road is closed, as far as the way, and I believe the 12 has blown a tire. I don't know who drives the 12. I can't remember, but nevertheless, but yeah, that's how we are at the moment. I believe 172, Charlie, where they are, which is actually they've just started lap 173. All the lead lap cars have pitted for 4 tires. The 5 is won the race with pit road, followed by the 9. That would Chase Elliott. So yeah. And
Zach, last week we were and Martin Truax Jr. claiming the win at Darlington. He's had a good year, hasn't he? 3 race wins this year as well for him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's up there already. He's up there already. He's had a good season so far, as well. But if you look at the if you look at the standings, Denny Hamlin's actually leading the standings, as well. So he's 75 ahead of Truax, as well. So he's in a good position. He's around, and Truax has run 3 races this season. Hamlin's obviously hasn't won any this season, actually, I should say. But Truax has won 3. Denny Hamlin's won none. But obviously Hamlin's had better results than Truax. So yeah, that's where they are at the moment. Ones are in the chase at the moment. It's Hamlin, Truax. No, Hamlin's not in the chase at the moment because he hasn't won yet. But he's leading, so he will probably get position. But Truax, William Byron, Logano, Blaney, Larson, Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, Michael McDowell in the chase at the moment. But they need to finish at least top 30 to remain there. So, yeah, they're all in the chase at the moment.
Yeah, I mentioned Michael McDowell as well because he won the Daytona 500, so he will get an automatic qualification into the chase. So it's going to be interesting. So the NASCAR action is currently at Dover. So we'll keep you updated on that in regards to who won the race. And that will be on tomorrow. And Formula One also returns, Zach, for the Monaco Grand Prix next weekend as well. Practice starts on Thursday. Excited for this one?
Yes, this is one of those races, Charlie, where practice on a Thursday, rather than the Friday. I don't know why, because there's normally racing action on the Friday in terms of Formula. I think it's Formula 2 that's racing this weekend, I believe. In Monaco, I could be wrong on that one, but nevertheless. But yes, this is one of these rare events that's done on the Thursday rather than the Friday. I have to say, Charlie, I'm already getting excited by the Monaco Grand Prix, because McLaren at 6 p.m. today unveiled a one-off livery. If you haven't seen it, it is brilliant. I will actually get an image up on here, actually, because they revealed. I'll give you
Might as well. All the listeners, I'm sure all the listeners would want to.
Here we go.
See the livery here.
Let me go and share this, because this is what it looks like, Charlie. It is an old throwback of the Golf livery from the 1970s when McLaren used to race in GTR. This is what it looks. This is what it's going to look like for the weekend, Charlie. I have to say
that's incredible.
That is so good. This is just a one-off for the Monaco race. But I'm telling you, I'm really excited for Monaco just to see that on track. That is cool. And fair play to the designers who did that. I mean, the outfit's all different as well. You can probably see. But it is one cool little car.
Lando and Daniel's livery. Outfits look great.
I mean, I wish I could just see that every weekend based on that. I mean, if that was the full-time livery for this year, then great. But it's a one-off, which is a shame. But it looks so cool, Charlie. It is something really, really good. And I have to say, it was worth looking up, watching the 6 p.m. announcement from McLaren, because that was really good. And they've developed an absolutely great looking machine. Let's just hope that converts into results this weekend, Charlie. Because that, I mean, that is something. McLaren have had good results this year, no doubt about it. Monaco's difficult though, because Monaco's the street track everyone wants to go to. Now, this will be very interesting because we're going to see fans as well, Charlie. We're going to see fans. I think it's about 7,500 where they're going to be there. But yeah, it's going to make quite a spectacle. This is Charles Leclerc's home Grand Prix as well, because he lives in Monaco. And it'll be interesting race, Charlie, because this will be determined who's really got the good car. I mean, Mercedes won last time out, in Barcelona. They've managed to find the good machine. Can Red Bull normally do better on these types of circuit, Charlie? I think, knowing them and past results, they produce a better car for these sort of circuits. Now, whether that will apply this year or not, we don't know. I think maybe Mercedes are in a better position with this type of circuit because they are better on the corners, but we don't know. I think it'll be an interesting fight to see. But there's been very little room for error on this type of circuit, Charlie. There's very little room for error. One mistake and you're in the wall. And that's the last thing you don't want to see. But Monaco, probably one of the best spectacles of the year, I have to say, Charlie. Not if you're an overtaker, let's just say that. And if anything, if it was like Formula E, then wow, we're in for something. Hopefully, we're in for something exciting.
We should be, Zach, and I think the livery as well, McLaren, it reminds me of the 1970s Le Mans livery that Porsche had. It was the same Golf blue. I remember that. It was
I think that's
really
exactly
iconic.
What they're trying to replicate there, Charlie. I don't know if it's some sort of anniversary or something like that they're celebrating, but they're really trying to replicate the McLaren racing days in the GTR Championship, something like that. So yeah. With Golf, because Golf is an oil company that they've had a sponsorship on their car for some while now. They've had a bit on-off relationship with McLaren, but this is an anniversary. I think this is maybe an anniversary to some sort of coming up, but it is looking very good, Charlie. Very, very good on the car, I have to say.
That's great. So the Monaco Grand Prix will be on this weekend. Dates for your diary will be the 20th to the 23rd of May. So get the dates and diary now. The Monaco Grand Prix. We're going to move on from Formula One to politics. Couple more segments to finish off the show. We're going to quickly go over the Queen's speech whilst we're here, because that was announced last week in Parliament. And Zach, we had some new announcements that were on the order paper for the Queen's speech.
Yes, there were several interesting bills that were announced. This is the Queen's speech, basically, Charlie, is the government setting out its agenda for the upcoming session of Parliament for next year. So that's what basically the Queen's speech is. Let me just tell you what bill. There were 25 bills that were in the Queen's speech, and that will be debated over the next parliamentary session, which will be this year to the next year. There was a product security telecoms infrastructure bill, extending 5G coverage, a subsidy control bill on how government can support private companies post-Brexit, procurement bill will place EU rules on how the government buys services to private sectors, tax breaks for employers based for 8 free ports, it's a national insurance contribution bill, advanced research and intervention bill, that's a UK agency to search for scientific discoveries. The next stage to build HS2. That's a bit controversial. Might watch out for that one. High speed rail bill. Government will be support legacy legislation, which has been a bit of a trouble for Tories as well. In terms of getting support of that. In the Armed Forces bill. Watch out as well, Charlie, for the online safety bill, which is going after tech giants. There will also be as well the controversial policing bill, which has caused the Kill the Bill protests as well. That will be debated in this Parliament. There will be also a few very controversial bills, Charlie, on dissolution and calling of Parliament. That will be getting rid of the fixed terms Parliament. That for the Prime Minister to call whatever general election is necessary under his own powers rather than Parliament's. There's also in the bill in the Parliament as well, Charlie, as well. Interesting. You've got it up there. Fantastic.
Yes, I've actually shared it for all the listeners out there who want to know about this bill. It's very, very
I've
important.
probably been ranting on whilst you've been showing this as well, but so I've obviously gone off a bit off track.
We've gone on to like a judicial review bill that will protect the judiciary from being drawn into political questions and preserve the integrity of judicial rights for its intended purpose. We also have another bill as well that is the electoral integrity bill, which will place the British participation of British citizens at the heart of our democracy and maintain confidence in an electoral process.
Charlie, this is a very controversial bill, Charlie. This is a very controversial bill, and I'll tell you why. This bill contains the requirements in future elections to show photo ID on you. Well, we don't know how that's going to be handled. You maybe should be able to show a driver's license and something like that. Why it's controversial, Charlie, is because this could affect basically minority groups. Basically, there's about 45% of black people in the UK don't own a driver's license, and that could disenfranchise them when they're required to show a photo ID. Now, it may be that the government may plan to introduce some sort of election ID instead that allow them to show photo ID, which will be helpful, and I think better. But people who are against these photo IDs are accused of being voter suppression. You may have seen a few similar voices in the US actually note this out as well. They introduced photo ID there. This is very controversial, Charlie, because this could be a voter suppression bill, in my opinion. This ID is not actually cheap to get here, Charlie. It's about 80 quid to get a bit of ID in the UK. That's pathetic, I think. And putting in a bill that will suppress the vote is not good. And let me give you an example, Charlie, of how many fraud cases there were in the 2019 election. One. There was one fraud case in the 2019 election out of 34 million votes cast.
Wow.
So to me, it's a problem. It's basically fixing a problem that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. If it ain't broke, don't fix. That's how I see it. And I just think this stuff, integrity, security, so there's no fraud and everything like that. it's a load of nonsense. It's a load of nonsense. Why would you introduce something that fixes something that doesn't exist and causes more problems than it solves? That's how I see it. I mean, the Tory side will love this. Okay. These are the same Tories, by the way, that are against ID cards or anything like that, but you know, and showing vaccine passport, they're happy to shove an ID, but they're happy to shove an ID card and something like that in front of you. I think it's hypocritical. I think, you know, their priorities lie somewhere else. If they don't like showing vaccine passports to show your health and stuff like that, then, you know, just for the free lot, then we shouldn't be showing ID to voting. I'm sorry. You know, civil liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of choice, you know, all those sort of things that they stand for. It's nonsense to them. It's just for political motivation.
And bill that was in Parliament, or that was on the Master Lobby, and obviously the Electoral Integrity Bill, wasn't there? I mentioned, did this bill sort of cover the 2020 US presidential election a little bit with that case of voter fraud?
No, that's whatever happens in the US is it's nothing to do with the US. This was, to be fair, Charlie, this was planned before we even got to US elections. Like the US the local governments in the US will deal with their own thing. This hasn't really nothing to do with how the US elections was handled or anything like that. That's for America. That's for the
yeah. Even though there was claims of even though there was reporters that said there were claims of voter fraud over there as well.
Well, that's nonsense. We know that's completely nonsense. That's full of lies as usual. I don't want the last thing we need is British parliamentarians to use that as a model or anything like that. But this bill was proposed anyway before the US elections or something like that. This was proposed before the pandemic. This is after, you know, the government won their overall majority. This was always in the plans anyway, Charlie. But this is only just going to happen this session. So it's damaging anyway, this bill. It's not a good idea. I think this is not. They're not doing this because of US election or anything like that. That's nothing to do with what's been happening over there. They've done it on their own choice. I don't think it's a good choice, to be fair. Yeah,
it's an interesting bill. I mean, there's a lot of the announcements were quite controversial. I mean, the kill the bill thing. I mean, that's a controversial one in its own right. Yeah. But I think, let me know, guys, down in the comments, what do you think of the new Queen's Speech bill and how that's going to affect Parliament over the years to come? Please let me know down in the comments. But we're going to finish off the Globetrotter Newscast today by talking about local politics now. Now, I'm going to turn our attention to Basildon because that's now going to be under Tory control. I've actually found out who the new leaders are going to be. So Andrew Baggott will lead the council and David Dadds will be the mayor of Basildon. This will be proposed at a council meeting later this month. But Zach, I've been hearing reports in Basildon about a centre called Langdon Community Centre that was shut down by Labour, but the Tories want to reopen it. And what do you make of this?
Well, it's interesting actually because it's interesting because I read something about what's happened. Let's look at the consequences of what's happened over these results, local election results for Basildon. Okay, there's this town redevelopment that's been proposed. I think it was under Labour Council at the time. Gavin Callaghan has the results said the last result have real consequence about this town development, which is I think it's worth £1 billion or something like that. I've read somewhere. Yeah. That's quite something. Yeah. So their plans was to have 4,000 high-rise homes in the town centre, 5,000-seat arena, a new transport hub, improvement to the town gate theatre. The Tories want to redevelop it now, so that's going to be huge, Charlie. That's they want to stop the high-rise and consult residents to come up with a plan. The previous consultation was loaded questions according to one of the Tory councillors. Yeah, so that's one side of it. I'm not worried about the Langdon thing. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I've read up that they want to reopen it. Apparently, it's
is that a youth centre?
But yes.
Right. Okay. Because I noticed the Tories now want to act as a youth centre. interesting, which I think is disgraceful if you think about it. If you're actually, youth centres actually been closed across the country under Conservatives. So you're going to get, this is perfectly sums it up. You're going to get rid of an important youth centre, right? Okay. And you are neglecting the young ones. It's disgraceful. And looking inside it, the youth zone, you can play pool there. Oh no, that's the plans actually. For a youth centre, I think that's the plan. There's going to be youth. It apparently can be spent somewhere else. I don't know where, but it looks what they're planning for the youth centre look really good. Because they simply don't want the towers being built. It's pathetic,
it's interesting.
Really.
Yeah, it's interesting, Zach, because I've read up a lot of this, and I mean, it's clear that the Tories want to undo a lot of Labour's manifesto plans. Like, it's clear a lot of these policies in Basildon are going to be undone. Like, we know that obviously the cinema complex that is still under construction, that looks like that's going ahead for an opening next year. Do you think Basildon is going to lack? What do you make of Basildon under a Tory leadership? Do you think Basildon is going to go in the right direction, or do you think it's going to go in the opposite direction?
Oh, if you ask me what Tory leaderships look like, then yeah, you know my answer, Charlie. You know my answer. I always think things are better with Labour controlled. I'm sorry to be biased, but if Labour, but Basildon under Conservative control, God help me. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We will see.
It's interesting, Zach, as well, because it's not just Basildon, I think, that's had changes to council as well. I mean, you had on the A127, they've actually added this 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and apparently this has been used to reduce pollution. Do you think that area should be a 50 or a 70?
Well, there's reason for putting 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. I mean, 50-mile-an-hour speed limits are safer if you think about it in the first place. 70-mile-an-hour is probably a little bit unsafe because you're going faster. 50-mile-an-hour is probably better for traffic flow and control reasons, and pollution as well because you're not going as fast. But there's multiple factors, and I think 50 on that road may sound a bit slow. I think some roads can be 70, 50, 60. It's a bit. I don't know about that. 50-mile-an-hour. It seems a bit slow. I'm not sure of it. I'm not sure of it.
It's an interesting one, Zach, isn't it? Because I mean, there's been lots of local areas where there's been new sort of party leaders coming. There's been re-elections. Obviously, Hartlepool, they've had a complete takeover of Conservative ownership from Labour, and some areas have gone from Conservative to Labour. What cities in this country and what council areas do you think need the most work done to improve their economies?
Well, you got to look at the north. I think that's where the government's levelling up agenda is. So the north needs new investment. Like Greater Manchester, for example. I think they want to take the buses back into public control, so they'll probably put investment into that. With Andy Burnham and that sort of that. But there's obviously the West Midlands as well. You obviously got Conservative mayor as well. They're going to have big investments there probably. I'm not sure really. I mean, the West Midlands and something like that, and the North, all those are crucial areas, as well. So I think that's probably where they're going to invest the most, if you ask me, the northern areas.
And Zach, just before I round this off, do you think the turnout of the local elections this year has really helped drive up local politics?
I'm not sure. If you look at cities like London, they had lower turnout. Local elections seem to be lower turnouts anyway. I mean, I think it's only actual proper general elections or referendums, for example, that really drive turnout. Because I think that's the only thing that really drive. They're the ones that drive turnout. I don't think local election is good for democracy if you're really hardcore into your local area. But if you're honest, I think younger people are only really engaged in actual elections, referendums. They don't really seem to be engaged in local politics that much. It's only they're in a certain group. They need to be engaged in local politics because they live in their area. I think it's doing like the older people, stuff like that, and that really are engaging to local politics, something like that. But no, exactly. I think if you're asking me from a perspective, does this engage local people to turn out? No, not from. If you look at these elections, no, not really. I think it's only the general and referendums that really engage turnout.
And I think as well, Zach, I was just going to add to this. Like, you look at some areas in Scotland, there's been big names, big MPs that have taken some key candidate seats in different constituencies. And you look at the same across this country. Do you think some areas have changed with the election of new MPs or councillors, like in Scotland with SNP areas and Conservatives in the UK and like some Labour areas?
Areas could change, Charlie. It just depends how, how hard the MP works for their area. There will be good MPs and there'll be some bad MPs. Some areas MPs will work really in their areas so well, and they'll get on with their constituents really well. And yet, people seem to vote based on the party these days, not how well they do in the local areas. Except for local elections, obviously. That sometimes it could be just I'll vote for this because of the party, or I'll vote for this person because he's popular. I mean, if you're an incumbent in a local election, you seem to be popular. You look at Ben Hutchison, Angie Street, Andy Burnham for stuff, Steve Rotherham. They got massive majorities because they seem to be well liked by their people. They didn't put a party down; they liked the person. Whereas local and general elections these days, no matter how hard you work for your constituents, many people vote by their party. So you could have really good MP representing the North, and yet they could be thrown out the next day because everyone else has voted another another party to represent them. And the relationship might change. The relationship might be different. It may be the same, but it has implications for their area because it has an impact on national politics as well, and the attitude to some areas as well. So who you elect is just as important as who is in charge.
Yeah.
I think, Charlie.
And Zach as well, this is my final sort of a question here. There are some council elections that actually have seats for their constituencies in Parliament. That's a bigger seat as well. And obviously some MPs do represent the constituents in Parliament to give their voice heard. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I do. What they don't need to be doing, however, is, double jobbing. So, example, let's say Bren Bradley, for example, who's the MP for Mansfield, he's become recently the Tory leader of Nottingham Council. He's a bit of a hypocrite because he was complaining about MPs getting a certain amount of wages and too many money and doing multiple jobs. Go ahead and do another one, Ben Bradley. Why don't you? But the problem with getting to do multiple jobs is you can't concentrate on a certain area. You're either representing, your area or not. And the likes of Douglas Ross, for example, is going to represent, go to the Scottish Parliament. And also to represent being a MP in Westminster as well. I mean, surely you can't concentrate your own area if you're doing two jobs at the same time. So yeah, it does matter in some ways. Do one job, focus on it.
It's interesting, Zach. I mean, you've got obviously in Westminster, you've got a completely different SNP leader in Ian Blackford, and then you've also got in Scottish Parliament Nicola Sturgeon, who leads the SNP up there.
Yeah, and the difference with that, though, Charlie, is that Ian Blackford does not go to the Scottish Parliament. He represents the UK Parliament in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon doesn't go to the UK Parliament. She only represents the Scottish Parliament. She focuses on one job. some of them decide to do two at once, which I think is I think they do it for money reasons, not because they want to represent people. I think they do it for financial reasons. It's not a good look anyway. So the advice is, focus on one job, and you can then represent the people who are paying attention to what job you're doing.
Yes, Zach, I agree. I agree with you on that point, because I think as well there is a lot of leaders in this country that are doing multiple jobs. You look at Mark Francois as another one I'll give, who is, I think, the local MP for Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford. He also has a seat in Parliament as well. So it's very interesting. You get some MPs who are sort of sitting on councils that are also members of Parliament for their own constituency. So it is very interesting. And I really think it's going to be interesting to see how MPs and their constituencies work, whether people get re-elected, whether new people like from different parties get elected. It's really going to change the way politics is derived in this country, I really think. So let me know down in the comments what you think about this issue. Please comment down below the Globetrotter Newscast. I'd like to get your opinions on local politics, and drop us a comment about what you think about local politics. Local politics is really important, I think, actually. It's good to see councillors debating about key issues, and I really think that many people should get out there. And in general, if you've got qualifications, if you want to become a politician, then I would say do the right courses. I think it's really, really important that people get involved with that. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I will see you next week for another edition of the Globetrotter Newscast. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Take care and goodbye.